So who here has seen this logo before? So for generations, this logo, this brand has touched the hearts of the world, America, everyone. It's a major player in quality entertainment, family entertainment, and theme parks worldwide. But what most people don't know about this logo, this brand, is that behind this logo is this man, Walt Disney. Growing up in a house where VHS Disney movies were played nonstop and my family and I traveled to Disneyland at least twice a year, I grew to love this company and all that he did for it. I've read over 50 books on the subject, so I kind of consider myself a little well-versed in the Disney name. And today I will inform you on this man, Walt Disney, and his life. I will begin with his early life as a child growing up in Midwest America, and then his move to California and the entertainment industry. I'll also talk about his involvement in the World Wars, as well as his later years in the creation of Disneyland. Walter Elias Disney was born in 1901 on December 5th to Elias Disney and Flora Disney in Chicago, Illinois. The family moved to Marceline, Missouri when he was really little, so he spent most of his childhood on a farm in Marceline. And he grew up with 3 older brothers, Herbert, Raymond, and Roy, and 1 little sister, Ruth. While on the farm, he learned to draw. He would draw the neighbors' animals, and he just had an appreciation for the simple lives of the farm. But when he was 9, the family moved to Kansas City, Missouri. This was a big shift for Walt Disney because he went from farm life to the city streets, and he worked for his father's paper route, so he would deliver papers twice a day, rain or shine, and this was very hard work. But all the while, he still kept his appreciation of art, and also he enlisted when he was 16. He enlisted to go overseas in World War I and forged his birth certificate, so he was 17, and he worked for the Red Cross. And when he came back to the States, the family moved yet again back to Chicago. And it was during this time that he really shined with his art, and he joined the University of Art in Chicago, where he met Ub Iwerks. The 2 of them became close friends, and they also started the Laugh-O-Grams company. And for that, they would make cartoons for the local theaters that would show before the feature films went on. And although they were very popular, unfortunately, they went bankrupt. And Walt Disney considered this his first major failure, but here's a quote by him from a book I read, and it says, "It's important to have a good failure when you're young. I learned a lot about that, because it makes you aware of what can happen to you." He took this failure and he went with it. He didn't let it stop him. He ended up working for the railroad, where he learned 2 things. One, that he had an affinity for railroads, and he kept that love for the rest of his life. And also that if he wanted to be successful in entertainment, he would have to move to California. With a few dollars in his pocket, he moved to California with his brother Roy, and they started the Walt Disney Brothers Studios, or eventually the Walt Disney Studios. And they produced shorts like the Alex Comedies, which combined live action film with cartoons, and also Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, which would all premiere before movies at local theaters. And although they were very popular, unfortunately Disney had another failure, which was he lost Oswald to its copyright holder. But out of that failure proved more success in that he created Mickey Mouse, which ended up being one of the most successful cartoon characters in the whole world. And from that success, he had more successes in his life, in that he married one of the girls that worked for him and his brother, Lillian Bounds. They ended up having 2 daughters, Diane Disney, and then they adopted another daughter, Sharon Disney. And Diane always spoke of her father as a man who kept his business life and family life separate, so he was a really good family man to his family. And he also had other successes in that he created the first cartoon to utilize sound in Steamboat Willie, which also starred Mickey Mouse. And the Disney Studio created the first full-length animated feature film. Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs premiered in 1938, and it was a big success. But then, after all the successes, World War II hit, and Walt Disney and the U.S. Army took over a lot of the studio, and it housed soldiers. And also during this time, the government saw how beneficial it would be to use Disney, so they had him make propaganda films for the American war effort that would kind of go against the Germans and everything. And the U.S. government also had Walt Disney go on a goodwill tour with some of his best animators to Latin America, just to kind of keep the good relationships between the U.S. And he created some more films about that. But all the while, the animators back in California, they ended up going on strike and they unionized. And this feeling of betrayal from Walt Disney, he felt betrayed by his animators, led him to join the Red Scare after the war and go before the House Un-American Activities Committee, which ended up kind of tarnishing a little bit of his name. And all the while, the studio still did release some like films that we consider classics now, like Pinocchio, Dumbo, Bambi, but because they didn't have the European market because of the war, they ended up being big flops. But from the experience of the wars and his experience just of making films and the move to live action films, he ended up wanting to move on to something bigger and better. And he had an idea to build an 8-acre park across the street from his studio that he would call Disneyland, and everyone told him, like, you're crazy, like, it's not gonna work, no one's gonna show up, no one's done this before. But he, being who he was, from failures and successes, he knew that he had to go with his dream. And that 8-acre park ended up going to be 160 acres, and it ended up being in Anaheim, California. Disneyland took 1 year to build, and it opened on July 17th, 1955. And although it had a little bit of rocky beginnings, it ended up being a huge success. And the one thing Walt Disney liked about his theme park was that unlike his films, which would just be done, this is a quote from him, it says, "Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there's imagination left in the world." He loved the idea of innovation and growth, and so he went on to make other things. He went to go work with the New York World's Fair, producing rides for there that ended up back in Disneyland. And he also had an idea to build a ski resort here in California in Mineral King. And he also had a huge plan for Florida. It was called Epcot, which is experimental prototype city of tomorrow, which although there is an Epcot in Florida now, it was pretty much going to revitalize how the American household was run. Like it was literally a Tomorrowland. But unfortunately, a lot of his ideas didn't get to reach their full potential because on December 15th, 1966, Walt Disney died at the age of 65. So it was really, he had a lot of things still in the works when he died that were still continuing, but just not up to the full potential that he had in mind. So everyone may have grown up on Disney and Disney movies like Snow White and Pinocchio and so on, but until you understand who he is, it's amazing to see how much of just him went into all of this. Walt Disney started from humble beginnings on a farm in the Midwest to hopeful horizons in California and throughout the rest of his life. And his undying love for progress as well as family entertainment and just progress, just the moving forward of everyone, is what gives Disney such a good name. Thank you.